One of the reasons that Mr. Trump's message about the economy on Monday was sidetracked was, of course, when he raised the possibility of Second Amendment people taking matters into their own hands to stop Clinton from appointing pro-gun control judges. That's a controversy that you reject. Trump said afterwards, no one thought he was suggesting violence, but I want you to take a listen. Here's Mr. Trump.
Nobody in that room thought anything other than what you just said. There can be no other interpretation. Even reporters have told me. I mean, give me a break.
So, but here's the thing. It wasn't just reporters. It was Republicans. It was people in Washington, D.C. who want Mr. Trump to win. And then if you look at the speech when he made those remarks, the man with the white beard who was sitting right behind Mr. Trump at that event, CNN tracked him down. Take a listen.
I was just absolutely taken aghast. Down here in the South, we don't curse in front of women, we don't drink liquor in front of the preacher, and we don't make jokes like that in public. We would have taken Mr. Trump to the shed and said, don't say things like that because people will misconstrue it.
So that's Darrell Vickers. That's a man who's going to vote for Trump. And he interpreted it the same way a lot of other people did. Now, does Mr. Trump need to listen to what Mr. Vickers had to say, which is be more careful with your words?
Look, yeah, I'm not going to say he didn't interpret it that way or not. The point is most people did not interpret it that way. It was not at all meant to be a threat. But the point, again, is you could have covered what he was saying, or you could try and take an aside and take the Clinton narrative and play it out. And you chose to do that instead. I mean, there's plenty of news to cover this week, but I haven't seen covered. You had information coming out about pay for play out of emails of Hillary Clinton's that weren't turned over, by the way, to the Justice Department for her investigation. That's a major news story. That you had the NATO base in Turkey being under attack by terrorists. You had a number of things that weren't appropriate to this campaign. We're part of what Trump has been talking about. You had economic numbers coming out this week that showed that productivity is down, housing ownership is down, unemployment, is at in over 102 million. These are all things that could have been covered this week. Instead, you took an aside that the Clinton narrative told you was something Mr. Trump told you he didn't mean, and you played it out for 2 days.
Okay, first of all,
that's what we're talking about.
But as a factual matter, on Monday, my show covered Mr. Trump's speech. Okay, we did. We covered Mr. Trump's speech. We covered the narrative, and we did cover those Hillary Clinton emails. So when these things, just because you say them, they're not true. I mean, we have been covering the substance. We have been covering the things that are bad to Hillary Clinton.
Jake, we've been talking about these messages all week. You covered it one day, and you covered this aside about the Second Amendment for 3 days. I mean, come on, there's not a comparison here. You had a chance to have a serious discussion about the two economic programs that were presented this past week, this very week, by the two candidates. There was no discussion. There was no comparison.
And Mr. Trump bears no responsibility. And Mr. Trump bears no responsibility for his campaign being off message. He's not. His comments about the Second Amendment had nothing to do with why we weren't covering the economic message.
His point about the Second Amendment was that people who cared about the Second Amendment should be concerned about Hillary Clinton's candidacy, and that those who are concerned probably would take up the cause. Now, you could interpret it, which I certainly didn't, as a threat. But if you want to go back and look at threats, then you ought to go back to 2008 when Hillary Clinton was running against Obama, and in May of that year when she was clearly the loser and asked, why are you still in the race? She said, well, remember, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in 1968. I mean, that's a much more direct reference laid at the feet of Hillary Clinton.
We did cover, I did cover that in 2008. I did cover it in 2008, and Hillary Clinton, what she did? She issued an apology. She said, I'm sorry my comments were meant that way, construed that way. That's not how I meant it. But let's move on. I want to ask you about Governor Mike